We often underestimate how much influence others have over the way we feel. A single word, a raised eyebrow, or a sarcastic remark can completely change the direction of our day. What's fascinating is that the same word, the same action, can roll off one person like water off glass, but cut another person to the core. The difference isn't the toxic person. The difference is the permission we grant them to enter our emotional space. Think about it, toxic people thrive on reaction. They seek validation not by building themselves up, but by pulling others down, yet their power is never inherent. It only exists when we hand over the keys to our peace, allowing them to dictate how we feel, how we think, and how we respond. Without that access, their influence dissolves into noise. This raises the essential question, why do they affect us so deeply? It's not just because of what they say or do. It's because of what we believe about ourselves in those moments. If we carried out insecurity or unhealed wounds, the words find a place to land, they confirm the lies we secretly fear about ourselves, and in doing so, they gain a power they never should have had. Imagine two people hearing the same insult. One laughs it off, the other carries it like a scar. The insult didn't change. The toxic person didn't change. What changed was the meaning each person gave it. This is why the why matters. It's not about changing them. It's about uncovering why we give them access to the most fragile parts of us. Many of us are conditioned from childhood to seek approval, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace at any cost. That conditioning makes us vulnerable to toxic behavior because we confuse keeping peace with losing ourselves. When we silence our truth to avoid confrontation, we're not protecting harmony, we're surrendering our peace. So the first step is awareness. Not awareness of them, but awareness of us. When a toxic person gets under our skin, it's an invitation to pause and ask why. Why did this comment pierce me? Why did I feel the need to defend myself? Why do I care so much about their opinion? That reflection turns every encounter into a mirror, showing us where our real work lies. The irony is that toxic people unknowingly become teachers. They reveal the boundaries we haven't set, the insecurities we haven't healed, and the peace we haven't learned to protect. Without them, we might never recognize the power we've been giving away so freely. And once we see that truth, the game changes. The focus shifts from trying to fix them to reclaiming ourselves. Because peace isn't lost by toxic people, it's surrendered by us. And if we can give it away, we can also take it back. When most of us think about power, we imagine influence over others, the ability to persuade, to dominate, to bend situations and people to our will. It's the kind of power we see glorified in leadership, in politics, in relationships. But that definition is fragile because it depends on factors outside our control. The moment people stop listening or circumstances shift, that power evaporates. Real strength is different. Real strength begins with what happens inside us. It is the discipline to master our emotions when provoked, to choose clarity when chaos calls for a reaction. It's the kind of power that can't be taken away because it doesn't depend on anyone else's behavior. It rests on our own choices. Toxic people often rely on manipulation and provocation to create control. They thrive when they can make us angry, insecure, or defensive because our reaction becomes their leverage. But when we redefine power as the ability to remain grounded no matter what they throw at us, we strip them of their weapon. Their control dissolves in the silence of our calm. Think of it like a storm. A storm rages with noise, wind, and lightning, but the mountain stands unmoved. The storm may roar, but the mountain doesn't bend. That's the kind of inner power we're talking about. The ability to remain centered even when toxic behavior surrounds us. It doesn't mean the storm isn't real. It means the storm doesn't decide who we are. This redefinition of power also forces us to rethink what winning looks like. Winning isn't delivering the perfect comeback or proving a toxic person wrong. Winning is walking away with our peace intact, refusing to let their chaos dictate our state of mind. It's recognizing that not every battle is worth fighting because some victories cost too much. We've been taught to see restraint as weakness, but it's actually the highest form of strength. Anyone can lash out when insulted, but it takes real power to stand still, to breathe, to decide what response, if any, is worthy of our energy. That's not passivity. That's control at its finest. Redefining power also means setting boundaries without guilt. It's having the courage to say no, to step back, to protect our well-being without needing to justify it. Because power isn't about forcing someone else to change, it's about shaping the conditions under which we allow them into our lives. And when we live from that place, toxic people stop being a threat. They may still speak, they may still act, but they can no longer dictate our inner world. Our strength is no longer measured by how much control we have over them, but by how little control they have over us. Toxicity doesn't arrive with a warning label. It slips into conversations, relationships, and workplaces quietly, often disguised as concern, humor, or even love. That's why it's so important to recognize the patterns. Toxic people rarely invent new tactics. They repeat the same script: manipulation, criticism, drama, over and over again. When we see the script, we stop being surprised by the performance. Manipulation often shows up first. It can be subtle, wrapped in guilt or obligation. A toxic person might say, "After all I've done for you, you owe me this." Or, "If you really cared, you would do it my way." The words may differ, but the intent is always the same: to bend your choices to serve their needs. Once you know the pattern, the mask slips, and you can see it for what it is. Criticism is another favorite tool. Not the kind that helps you grow, but the kind that chips away at your confidence. It's the backhanded compliment, the unnecessary jab, the comparison that leaves you feeling small. The danger isn't in the words themselves, but in the repetition. Over time, constant criticism becomes a soundtrack that we start to internalize unless we recognize that it was never about us to begin with. Then comes the drama. Drama is the fuel of toxic behavior. It thrives on conflict, thrives on chaos, thrives on keeping you off balance. It might be a sudden explosion over something small or a manufactured crisis designed to pull you in. The pattern is simple. If they can keep you reacting, they keep you distracted. Spotting this early allows you to step back instead of stepping into the fire. What makes these patterns so effective is that they often target our deepest needs: the need to be accepted, the need to be valued, the need to belong. When someone manipulates us, criticizes us, or drags us into drama, they're not just attacking from the outside, they're pressing buttons on the inside. Recognizing the pattern is the first step to disarming it. It helps to imagine these patterns like road signs. Manipulation is a detour sign leading you away from your own values. Criticism is a speed bump designed to slow down your confidence. Drama is a flashing light warning you that chaos is ahead. If you don't see the signs, you might drive straight into the trap. But if you do, you can choose another road. The beauty of recognition is that it gives you choice. Before, the pattern ran unconsciously, pulling you into the same arguments, the same disappointments, the same exhaustion. But once you spot it, the spell is broken. You see the script playing out, and instead of being an actor in their play, you step off the stage. And the more you practice spotting these patterns, the quicker you notice them. A phrase, a tone, a look, and you know what's coming next. Toxicity becomes predictable, and when it's predictable, it loses its power, because you can't be trapped by something you've already named. Most people misunderstand boundaries. They think of them as barriers, as walls built to keep others away. But boundaries are not about shutting people out. They are about creating the conditions in which relationships can survive with respect intact. Without them, we don't actually connect. We collide over and over until peace is shattered and trust erodes. A boundary says, "This is where I end and you begin." It is a line of clarity that prevents confusion, resentment, and abuse. Far from being selfish, boundaries are acts of respect. They tell others how we expect to be treated, and they tell us how to honor our own well-being. In their absence, toxicity grows unchecked, because people assume access where none should exist. Think of boundaries as bridges. A bridge allows two people to meet in the middle without falling into the river below. Too rigid, and the bridge crumbles from inflexibility. Too weak, and it collapses under pressure. But when built with care, a boundary bridge supports the weight of real connection. It keeps both people safe while making the relationship sustainable. Toxic people often resist boundaries because boundaries expose their patterns. If someone thrives on manipulation, criticism, or drama, a boundary disrupts their script. They can no longer control the situation as easily. This resistance can make boundaries uncomfortable to set, but discomfort is a small price to pay compared to the chaos of living without them. Setting boundaries doesn't always require confrontation. Sometimes it's as simple as changing our response. Choosing not to answer late-night messages, stepping out of an unnecessary argument, or refusing to carry guilt that isn't ours. Every small act of clarity strengthens the bridge. And over time, people learn where the line is, even if they don't like it. The fear of boundaries often comes from the belief that we'll lose people if we enforce them. And sometimes that's true. But if a relationship can't survive healthy boundaries, was it ever healthy to begin with? A boundary doesn't destroy love or respect. It reveals whether love and respect were there at all. Boundaries also teach others by example. When people see us honor our own limits, it invites them to do the same. A world without boundaries is a world of exhaustion, where no one knows where they stand. But a world with clear boundaries is a world where peace has room to breathe, because expectations are no longer hidden. At the heart of it, boundaries are not walls of exclusion, but bridges of protection. They make connection possible without the cost of losing ourselves. They allow us to show up fully, because we no longer fear being consumed, manipulated, or diminished in the process. Every time we engage with someone toxic, we spend something. Not money, but energy, focus, and peace of mind. Arguments aren't free. Emotional reactions aren't free. They come at the cost of mental clarity, productivity, even our physical health. The question is never, do I have the right to respond? The question is this worth the price I'll pay afterward? When you enter into conflict with a toxic person, you rarely leave with more than you started. They don't argue to understand, they argue to dominate. They don't fight to resolve, they fight to drain. The moment you step into their arena, the rules change. Logic doesn't apply, fairness doesn't apply. All that matters to them is winning, and even your peace becomes collateral damage. Think about the aftermath of a heated exchange. Long after the words are spoken, you replay them in your mind. You lie awake imagining what you should have said, or what you'll say next time. Hours slip away, energy is consumed, And the toxic person doesn't even need to be present anymore. They live rent-free in your thoughts. That's the hidden cost of engagement. There's also the toll it takes on your relationships. When you carry frustration from a toxic exchange, it bleeds into other areas of your life. The people you love, the work you care about, even your own sense of calm can become casualties of a fight that was never worth having. It's like paying interest on a loan you never wanted to take out. This is why asking the question, is this worth my peace, becomes so powerful. Not every comment requires a response. Not every provocation deserves attention. Choosing silence, walking away, or simply refusing to internalize the drama isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that peace is more valuable than proving a point. We often think engagement is the path to control. We want to explain to correct, to make them see reason. But in truth, engagement often cements their control because it keeps us tethered to their game. The less we respond, the less they can pull us in. Detachment is not surrender, it is a declaration that our peace cannot be purchased with their chaos. It helps to see engagement like currency. If you only have so much emotional energy to spend each day, who or what is truly worthy of it? Is it the colleague who thrives on gossip? The family member who never listens? Or is it the goals you're working toward? The people who lift you up, the practices that restore you? Spending your peace on someone toxic is like throwing money into a fire. And once you realize every reaction has a price, the choice becomes clearer. You stop fighting battles that don't matter. You stop renting space in your head to people who haven't earned it. You stop giving away the very peace you've worked so hard to protect. Reactions are instinctive. They happen in the heat of the moment, fueled by emotion and urgency. A sharp comment, a raised voice, a defensive posture. It all unfolds before we even realize what's happening. Toxic people rely on this. They know if they can push the right button, they can trigger an immediate reaction. And in that instant, they have control. A response, on the other hand, is different. A response requires pause. It comes from reflection, not impulse. It's the space between stimulus and choice where we decide what matters most. Our ego or our peace, the need to be right or the need to remain centered. Responding doesn't mean we agree. It means we refuse to give chaos free rent in our emotions. The challenge is that reacting feels good in the moment. The comeback, the raised tone, the I'll show you, energy, it feels like power. But afterward, there's often regret. We replay the argument, wishing we had handled it differently. That's because reaction belongs to them, but response belongs to us. One keeps us trapped in their script, the other writes our own. Responding also doesn't always mean speaking. Sometimes the strongest response is silence. Sometimes it's a calm exit from the conversation. Sometimes it's choosing not to engage at all. Toxic people feed on drama, and silence starves them. A measured response creates a void where their chaos has nowhere to land. Think of it like martial arts. Instead of meeting force with force, you redirect the energy. Their anger, their manipulation, their criticism, it doesn't stick because you refuse to absorb it. A response deflects without escalation. It sends a message that says, I see your move, but I choose a different game. A learning to respond instead of react requires practice. It begins with awareness of our triggers, those specific words, tones, or behaviors that ignite us. When we know what sparks our reaction, we can prepare for it. A breath, a pause, a grounding phrase we tell ourselves, these simple tools create the space for response to replace reaction. The difference may seem small, but over time, it transforms everything. Reacting leads to cycles of conflict that drain us. Responding breaks the cycle and preserves our peace. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about channeling it with intention. A calm response carries more strength than the loudest reaction. And once we master that difference, toxic people lose one of their greatest weapons. They can provoke, they can push, they can perform their script. But the show only goes on if we play our part. By choosing response over reaction, we step out of their drama and reclaim our role as the author of our own peace. The people we surround ourselves with act like mirrors, constantly reflecting back who we are and what we value. Whether we realize it or not, their attitudes, their habits, and even their language shape the way we think and feel. If we spend our time around negativity, criticism, and drama, it seeps into our mindset. If we surround ourselves with encouragement, growth, and kindness, that becomes the environment we rise into. Toxic people drain energy because they take without giving. Every interaction becomes a transaction where your peace pays the price. They demand attention, stir conflict, or plant seeds of doubt. Over time, being around them doesn't just exhaust you, it changes you. You become more guarded, more reactive, more depleted. That's why protecting your circle is not about being selective out of arrogance, but out of necessity. The opposite is also true. Some people multiply your energy simply by being present. They challenge you without diminishing you. They celebrate your wins without jealousy. They listen not to reply, but to understand. These people add to your life in ways that make you stronger, calmer, and more grounded. The more time you spend with them, the more you become like them. It helps to think of your circle like a garden. Every relationship is a plant. Some grow fruit, some give shade, some add beauty. But weeds, if left unchecked, will spread until they choke the life out of the garden. Protecting your circle means noticing what drains the soil and pulling it out before it spreads too far. This doesn't mean cutting people off at the first sign of imperfection. Everyone has flaws and every relationship requires patience. But there's a difference between someone who occasionally drains you and someone who consistently poisons the environment. Protecting your circle means knowing the difference and acting accordingly. It also requires honesty with ourselves. Sometimes the toxic person is not outside the circle, it's us. If we find ourselves complaining more than contributing, taking more than giving, criticizing more than encouraging, we become the drain. Protecting your circle means not only choosing the right people, but choosing to be the kind of person who multiplies rather than subtracts. One of the hardest parts of protecting your circle is letting go of relationships that no longer serve your growth. Loyalty can keep us tied to people who continually diminish us. But loyalty without balance becomes bondage. Protecting your peace sometimes means loving people from a distance, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring for yourself. When you're intentional about who you allow into your circle, everything changes. Your energy rises, your perspective sharpens, your peace deepens. Because the people closest to you either anchor you down or lift you higher, and the choice of who gets that access is always yours. Peace is often imagined as a destination, a place we arrive at once we've removed every toxic person from our lives. But peace isn't a final stop, it's a practice. It's the choices we make each day about where to place our attention, how to respond to negativity, and how much of ourselves we are willing to give away. It's less about elimination and more about repetition. Handling toxic people is not a single act of courage or clarity, it's a discipline. Some days you'll walk away calmly, holding your peace with ease. Other days you'll slip, react, and feel the weight of regret. Peace is built not by perfection, but by consistency, the willingness to return again and again to the choice of protecting your inner world. Every encounter becomes a practice ground. The critical remark, the manipulative request, the unnecessary drama, all of these moments offer a chance to rehearse peace. Will you fuel the fire with reaction, or will you steady yourself with intention? Each decision becomes a brick in the foundation of your calm. The key is remembering that peace doesn't mean avoiding conflict at all costs. It means refusing to let conflict define you. There will be people who test your patience, who misunderstand you, who try to pull you into their storms. Practicing peace doesn't mean silencing your voice. It means speaking with clarity instead of chaos, choosing timing over impulse, and protecting your dignity while doing so. Like any discipline, peace requires tools. For some, it's deep breathing before responding. For others, it's journaling, prayer, or meditation. For many, it's surrounding themselves with supportive people who remind them of their worth. The tools don't have to be elaborate, they just have to be used consistently, especially in the moments when peace feels hardest to hold. What makes peace powerful is that it compounds over time. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. What once triggered a reaction will no longer shake you. What once drained you will no longer reach you. Practiced peace turns into practiced strength, and that strength becomes your shield against the toxic patterns around you. This practice also changes how others see you. Toxic people lose interest when they realize they can't get the reaction they want. Healthy people are drawn closer because they feel safe in your calm. Your practice not only protects you, it reshapes the environment around you, creating space where respect and clarity can thrive. And the truth is, peace isn't something you stumble into. It's something you choose deliberately in every conversation, in every boundary, in every response. It's the discipline of saying, I value my inner world too much to hand it over to chaos.